What's going on, guys? I am Follygon, and in this video I'm going to show you what I think about when I am sculpting a head. Specifically during the early stages of that process and what that looks like, and kind of what you can think about to speed up your workflow and just kind of nail down the general shapes of a head pretty quickly here. So the main thing that you need to understand when sculpting a head is proportions. Proportions can obviously be very helpful, but something that I think will help you out a lot more after you start understanding a lot of those basic proportions, which of course I will talk about here in just a very brief moment, is going to be understanding the planes of the head. I've seen a comment in the past that was very curious about what I meant by planes, like was I talking about airplanes or what exactly that meant? No, I'm never talking about airplanes or any kind of flying vehicle when I'm talking about the planes of the head or the planes of any three-dimensional object. A plane is simply what we have right here with this shape, and it is a flat surface, a plane of geometry. If we click up here in our tools and we see all these different objects, we have a sphere, a cube, a cylinder, should all be very familiar with those, and then we have a 3D plane, which is exactly what I just mentioned there, a plane or flat piece of geometry. So when I'm talking about planes, that is what I am referring to, the planes of the face, these flat areas of the face, and specifically we will be talking about what are called plane changes. So a plane change is going from one plane to another plane, whether that be curved, flat, rounded, square, anything in between, it doesn't really matter. From one plane to another, the area in between that is called a plane change because that is, well, where we change planes. So looking at the basic shapes that I have here in place, we have something extremely simple. I have just used two spheres to very quickly create a stretched out piece of geometry. I will go ahead and undo on all of this back to the starting point to go ahead and redo that process so you guys can maybe follow along if you're interested in learning about this process that I like to utilize to block out my heads. So I just grab a very large move brush and pull down on this shape. Obviously, we don't want to go super far because we don't want our character's jaw to be super elongated. So maybe about right there looks pretty good. Then I like rotating around to the side, and there are a number of ways that you can do this process with mask brushes to pull up the backside of the head. You could just use your move brush. It really doesn't matter what process you use as long as you visually separate the back of the skull, which is, for all intents and purposes for now, a sphere, and the front shelf of the face, which we can just represent with a simple block. From there, there are some proportional tweaks that we can make, just using the move brush a little bit more to kind of pull out on our shape, make the back maybe a little bit more rounded, the front a little bit more blocky, and also give this plane change for the jaw, which we'll be talking about here very soon, a little bit more of an angle, something angled down at roughly a 45 degree or so, which this is not. This is, a little bit less than that, but close enough for now. So rotating back to the front, another thing that I like to do is either squash the sides of the head or plane them out. So there's that word again, plane out. Specifically here, I'm using the transpose line to do that, which is a little bit of a hotkey. But if you're interested, you can just hold Control and Shift, click up here, grab yourself a clip brush of any kind. I'll just grab a clip curve, and we will draw out a simple clip line right here. And that will clip off the sides of the head, and that will plane that shape. From there, there's a lot of different things that you can do to create a quick neck. It's not a huge deal, but I'll make one really quick just so we can continue forward. With your transpose line or 3D gizmo, if you Control, click, and drag, you can create a new piece of geometry. And why make new geometry when you can just utilize what you already have? The neck is pretty much a cylinder, so I could make a cylinder, but instead, I think I'll just use this rough sphere that I've squashed and shaped and roughly pull out into a shape like that. And that was all done there with the move brush and the smooth brush, which you can achieve just by, of course, holding the Shift key. All right, so our neck's a little bit narrow, so I will scale it up ever so slightly. Maybe, let's see, a little bit thicker. Right about there looks perfectly fine. And I'll do another little clip operation to chop off some of that neck as well. All right, from there, let's work our way back up to our head and start making some new plane changes. There are a couple areas that I like to look at first. Finding the midpoint or center point for the eyes is one very important place. You can find that just by drawing out a transpose line from the bottom of the jaw to the top of the head. And wherever that exact middle point is, that is where you want to put your eye line. You can, of course, do that, or you can just eyeball it. Whatever really works for you is totally fine. We can maybe double check on where that was. That looks fine to me. I will just use a pinch brush and pinch through that area. You could also use a standard brush. You could use a clay brush. You could use a Damien standard brush. You could use any number of brushes to create this basic effect. There's a billion different ways to go about everything here in ZBrush, but at least for now, I'll just use a little bit of a pinch and maybe a little bit of a move brush to kind of push in along that area. Now, as you can see, while sculpting there with the pinch brush, we've got very stretched polygons, very stretched geometry. So that means it's time to go ahead and scroll on down to Dynamesh and click on that button right there. So this will redistribute our polygons nice and evenly, and if you want to reuse that, so if you pull out and stretch geometry a little bit more, you can of course control click and drag again and redistribute your polygons like so. I don't really want that there, so I will undo that back to this place and we will continue forward. So as I said, finding that eye line is going to be very important. That's the nice first step, but also with that, finding the jawline, very important as well. So for the jawline, I'll use the exact same tool, that pinch brush, and just pinch and pull around here, right to the corner and up, and just kind of pinch along that line. It does not need to be perfect. Things are getting very messy here, so if they do get messy, of course, re-Dynamesh, maybe smooth out a little bit if you want. It doesn't need to be perfect. During this part of the stage, it's all about keeping things nice and simple and clean. Now, the shape for the brow is a little bit high after using a very large pinch brush, which is my mistake. So I will just pull down on my bridge line, which is what we have here. We can maybe use a pinch brush yet again and pull through that shape and just connect it up here to the corner, which is roughly where our corner of the eye will be. And we will also take this line now from the corner here and pull it all the way down here to roughly where our corner of the mouth will be, and then pull it down all the way to the chin. So this helps to plane out the front plane of the face, which is this shape here, and separate it from the side plane of the face. So now the front and side are a little bit more separated, which is nice visually for us as we continue forward. But also, just from an anatomical state or anatomical form, this is pretty close to what we would expect in terms of a separative turning point for the face. So visually it's nice, but later on I like to smooth this out and get rid of it entirely. But in terms of the main shape, it is still there. Very important to know where that plane change is happening. But keeping it hard and very sharp like this doesn't really make sense for an anatomical form. So of course, we will continue on from here, and I'll get in the bridge of the nose. I'm just using a clay brush for this. You could, of course, like I said before, use a standard brush or anything else. Maybe a little bit of move as well to pull out, start blocking out where that nose will be. It's nice to create a simple separation here. I like to get a little curve or dip in here from the profile. I think that feels really nice. And I also like to widen out the base of my nose and pull in towards the middle bridge of the nose. You can also use things like pinch brushes to pinch in and plane out the top and bottom portion of the nose. So we now have a plane change from top and bottom, and we also have a plane change from the front plane of the face to the side plane of the nose. This is also another one of those areas that tends to soften out, just like the side plane of the face. So at least initially, just getting that in there is very helpful, and we can continue on from there. I'll use my move brush to make some proportional tweaks here. Maybe get something a little bit closer to the proportions we might expect for a human. If you're interested in getting that a little bit closer, in terms of the appeal that people like to aim for is somewhere roughly between the chin and the eye line. Wherever the middle point of that intersection is, will typically be the bottom of the nose. Now, there's a lot of differences in humans, so that's not always going to be the case, but in terms of an anatomical norm, there really isn't one. So we aim for ideals with a lot of our artistic ideas, and that tends to be a very popular one that people aim for. Any old brush will do just fine for creating a simple mark in your surface here to kind of separate a little area for the mouth. Keeping this very simple is super important during the early stages. Keeping everything very simple here during the early stages is very nice because it's easy to get overwhelmed by a lot of different stuff all at once. From here, we have a lot of rough, sharp planes, but I'm actually going to make them a little bit sharper by going back over top of a few different areas and making sure that I've really defined those nice and neatly. So I'm going to go back through using my move and pinch brush, deepen the eye cavity here, grab that pinch brush again, make sure this area for the brow is feeling nice, coming down here to the chin, making sure that jawline's still looking good. And you know what? Taking a look at it from this angle, looks a little rounded to me. So let's get something a little bit more straight from the corner of the jaw all the way down to that chin. That feels a little bit nicer to me. We can start to pull in on that area on the side plane of the face. We're getting quite a bit of extra volume here, so we might want to give a little thickness to our neck. Continue playing with those shapes there. But for the most part, in terms of starting out working on a face, these are the kind of major areas that I like to look at. Getting that main shape for the back of the skull, which we can still see, the front shape of the face, the plane change for the jawline, the eye line, the brow, the front and side plane, the nose, and the mouth. Really the only thing that we are missing here would be an ear, but I don't like to sculpt the ear directly onto my surface like this. I like to add it as a separate piece of geometry. So for me, what I like to do is I'll just append in a sphere and then take that sphere and position it right over to the side plane of the head that we marked up earlier. And in terms of placement for the ear, you can take your ear and put it right here in that corner, right where my little circle is, right there. So I'll put that back. I will squash it, and then I will rotate it to be roughly, and this is not an anatomical truth, but roughly at a 45-degree angle. Angle it back. Everybody's ears are different. Maybe squash the front a little bit. And then the typical proportion that we will see, let's say, will be roughly between the eye and the bottom of the nose. That's not going to be true for everybody. As you grow older, your ears continue to get larger, and everybody's ears are different. Just like everybody's eyes, nose, and mouth are different as well. From there, we can go ahead and mirror that over the other side. So let's find a modified topology, mirror, and weld. Beautiful. And maybe let's just push in on that geometry, which you could, of course, do with any number of brushes. But here, at least, I'll just use a clay brush and maybe a little bit of move and get that roughly into place. Maybe something a little bit more traditionally ear-shaped. Kind of mark out those plane changes coming up, out, and then down. And then, of course, back in around the lobe. So we got some cool shapes going on there. Some fun ears. Feels a little alfalfa-esque, so we might want to rotate them back even a little bit more. You can turn on things like perspective to check how things are looking a little bit more accurately to what we might expect. Of course, we see everything in real life with perspective because we have two eyes. We do not have monovision or an orthographic view, which is what we see without perspective turned on. So I will keep that on. And then from here, it's just a matter of continuing to tweak and refine some of your shapes. You can also take a lot of your shapes and start to smooth out these hard plane changes, get things to feel a little more organic, a little bit more close to what we might expect for an actual human character. You could start to sculpt in little bits of extra form right around your eye cavity. I'm just pressing in here with my clay brush to create a little bulge or form here for the eye, and then taking things like pinch brushes, you can start to clean up that area just by making that a little bit more traditionally eye-shaped, a little bit football-shaped or something like that. American football, that is, not an actual sphere. And then just cleaning up the shape for the side plane of the face over here. It was looking like it was dipping in a little bit, so I'm just continuing to add some extra form here. But for the most part, that is pretty much it in terms of what I like to think about as I continue forward during those really early stages of working on a head. It's all about understanding the proportion and the major plane changes. There are a few others as things get more complex, such as around the bottom area of the lip. The lower lip transition into the jawline here tends to have a nice strong shelf. There tends to be a little bit more of a plane change for the area wrapping around the mouth, creating this kind of ball of the mouth here, as this area, volumetrically speaking, comes forward a lot more. And there's quite a bit more here that we could continue to do on this as we adjust and push forward on the shape. But for the most part, this is what we want to be focusing on, or at least this is what I focus on here as I am sculpting during those early stages. I want to point out here very quickly that even at an extremely low resolution, as we lower the poly count on this piece, you can see the major shapes are still there. Everything there for the location of the mouth, the nose, the eyes, the shape of the brow, the plane change, we can still see that rolling through here for the front and side plane of the head. We can see the side plane, top, front plane there for the forehead, back, and then transition down into the neck. All of that stuff should be visible even on this low resolution here. So if you want a good test to see if you're doing a good job on the planes of your face, just take your geometry, scroll on down to Z-Remesher, set your target poly count to 1, and click on Z-Remesh, which is what I did here. And that's going to be it for this video. I wanted to keep this one relatively short, hopefully helpful to a lot of you people that are new to sculpting, especially those that are trying to sculpt some faces. This is a great way to start getting your artistic eye and artistic brain thinking about primary shapes, primary form, thinking about plane changes, which, as I've pointed out here, are extremely important. If you guys enjoyed the video, click that like button, click subscribe if you are new around here to the Follygon YouTube channel. And if you want to learn more about digital sculpting, check out gumroad.com/Follygon, where you can get things like my custom brushes, materials, and a bunch of other online courses and some other cool free goodies as well. Hope the video was helpful. You have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.